Welcome, everybody, and thanks for being with me this next hour. I am your host, Psychic Astrologer C.A. Brooks, and you are listening to Simple Tales on Transformational Tuesdays here on 1-2 Radio, where we are changing the way we listen to the world. And I'm coming to you today from very, very snowy Denver, Colorado. We have a major blizzard going on. We've had some snow this year, but this is our first, really big snow. So, in fact, I promised the dogs, they kind of both looked outside and we're not going to go out there. They have a dog door. And I said, I'll tell you what, after the show, I will walk out there with you because it's already pretty deep. It's pretty fun. So it'll be exciting and it'll keep me busy. So you can find me available on 1-2 Listen, I'm sure the next few days because I'm going to be sitting here working. So that'll be good. But if you are listening live today, this is October 29th. 2019. And on today's show, I'm really fortunate to have Caroline Nettle, one of the newest members of the 1-2 family. Now, she joined us as an advisor just about a week ago, and she's already doing great things. She is an angel intuitive and a health intuitive and a spiritual advisor. And I would encourage you at some point to go over to 1-2 Listen and to really check out what she's got going on over there, her bio page, but also her time-based sessions and her email-based sessions. Because one of the things, even though she just joined us, she's been at this for quite a while. And one of her specialties is being a health intuitive and not diagnosing. We don't do that kind of thing through 1-2 Listen, unless, of course, you're a doctor or a nurse or something like that, and you've got the credentials. But one thing she does, she is very, very good at tuning in to people's bodies. Now, I'm going to let her talk about that because I don't want to misspeak. But that's one of her specialties, is being able to work with people to deal with some of those symptoms in our lives and to just help your body realign. And she does that through email-based sessions. And she's got this really nice write-up over on 1-2 Listen in the email-based session section describing what that means, how it works, etc. So if that's something you're interested in, I would encourage you to go check it out. But when you call her on 1-2 Listen, she can do any number of things, including checking in with the angels and other guides to give you some advice or to talk you through some situations. So I feel very, very fortunate that we have her on 1-2 Listen and that I've got her on the show today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some astrology, then I'm going to talk to Caroline, and then hopefully we'll have some time to do some readings out of the chat room, and specifically those of you who would like an angel reading. That's kind of what we're looking at today with Caroline being on the show. So if there's something going on for you and you want us to check in, or you just want to get a message from an angel or a guardian of some sort, be thinking about what that is, and you can post it in the chat room over on Facebook. And if you've never been in our private group over there on Facebook, you can find that by going to 12radio.com and clicking on the word chat. And when you do that, it'll automatically redirect you over to Facebook. So I hope you'll join us over there. And, just wave hello, say hello. And I want to shout out to everybody who's already there. Thank you so much for coming in today. And I hope wherever you are that you are nice and comfortable. I'm going to put it that way because, I already tend to say, hope you keep warm. But I know over in Florida, they are having some really high temperatures and in other places in the country and in the world. So I hope wherever you are comfortable. So thanks for joining us this morning. And like I said, I want to talk a little astrology before we get Caroline on the line. And the reason I do is because, I feel like there's been a couple of rough days here coming off that new moon in Scorpio. But I want you to know that the moon is going to move into what we call sunny, optimistic Sagittarius on Wednesday. That's tomorrow morning if you're listening live. And it's going to stay there through Thursday evening. So you know what? You will feel a real lightening of the energy, something going on. However, we are in the season of Scorpio. And I mention that because we've got some major Scorpio energy going on out there, including, and I want you to pay attention to this too, Mercury is going to retrograde in Scorpio starting on Thursday morning. That's Halloween, the 31st of October. But before he does that, it's kind of interesting. On Wednesday, Mercury and Venus are going to be together in the sky. Now, when I say that, I don't literally mean right together. I mean visually. From the way it looks to us on planet Earth, it looks like they're right together. They're having a meeting. They're having a hot date, whatever you want to call it. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing because Venus and Mercury get together. And oftentimes when that happens, we'll say, oh, well, that's a great time to have these deep conversations, about love or values, or to really get together with somebody and just have a heartfelt conversation. Now, I truly do believe that. But I think this time it's even more special because Mercury is going to go retrograde the next day. So it's almost like to me that Mercury and Venus are touching base with each other. Because, by the way, Venus is going to move into Sagittarius on Friday. So see, she's going. She's heading out. And so they're going to have like this little, this one-on-one on Wednesday. So I want you to be aware of that because there's a couple of things that could happen. It could mean that it really is an eye-opening or heart-opening opportunity to have a conversation or to somehow, come into alignment with a loved one. Maybe you'll meet somebody and it'll be a very special opportunity for you. But it also could just be even just within your own mind, within your own heart. You might have this sense of really thinking about something that's really valuable to you, really going deeper with it. And so then as Mercury goes retrograde, you may say to yourself, yeah, I really want to go deeper with this. This is something I'm passionate about. And maybe I put it to the side. Maybe I put it on a back burner and now I want to bring it forward. Or maybe it's something you've forgotten about. Maybe it was something you were passionate about when you were a child. Or maybe it's something you've never been passionate about. Maybe it's something that all of a sudden catches your eye and you say, especially during the Mercury retrograde, I want to go deeper with this. But whatever it is, I think there's a little magic, if you want to call it that, on Wednesday afternoon when Mercury and Venus come together at the very end of Scorpio. And then, of course, on Thursday, which is Halloween, that's what we call it, October 31st, that's when Mercury will go retrograde, which means that basically for 3 weeks, it appears to us on planet Earth that Mercury is moving backwards. Now, this one is kind of one of those, I want to say, double whammy things because Scorpio already is a very deep, mysterious, inward-looking sign. And then when Mercury goes retrograde, that's kind of the meaning of a retrograde. We go inward, we go deeper, we're looking at something more carefully, we're looking at something from a different and an inner perspective. Maybe we're looking at it from a psychological perspective or from a spiritual perspective. So Mercury going retrograde in Scorpio has a double intensity, I think, because of that. And for those of you who are keeping track, Mercury goes retrograde on October 31st. Then it will go direct again on November 20th. Now, technically, for those of you who like to look at the shadows, which means when does Mercury get back to the point where it was when it first started the retrograde? Well, that happens on December 7th. So if you're looking at the entire cycle, which I do, I really look from the 11th of October, which is the beginning of the shadow, to December 7th, which is the end of the shadow. But technically, Mercury only looks like it's moving backwards from October 31st through November 20th. So those are going to be some important things. And I'd also mention that I think this one is a very powerful, maybe even profound Mercury retrograde cycle, because Mercury is also going to link up with Saturn and Neptune and Pluto 3 different times because of the retrograde. And whenever planets meet up, multiple times, it's almost like the first time there's an opening, like a conversation is started. Think of it that way. Then the second time they come together, they're looking at something, they're looking at it from a different perspective. Maybe they're even arguing about something. But when they come together the third time, it's almost like they come to an agreement or something, some aha moment happens. Now, through Mark's Power Peak, I will point those out to you because, I write a column that tells you where the planets are every single day. Well, not specifically that way, but I let you know when they're getting together. So I hope that you will continue to read the Power Peak in that article and all the articles in the Power Peak. But In the week ahead section, you can know when those particular coming together of Mercury and those planets is going to happen. I'll point those out to you. But just once again, I look at that as an astrologer and I say, you know what? That's not a mistake. That's not a coincidence. This is something that we can use. This is part of our curriculum. This could be very important to some of us. So just think about that a little bit. You know, this one could be a really eye-opening, heart-opening Mercury going retrograde. So nothing to be afraid of here. I mean, in fact, I'm quite anxious for it. I think I'm excited about it. And already, you know, like even this morning, I put something in Kat's chat room and I put the wrong website, and so it went totally someplace else. And I just kind of laughed and said, "There's Mercury retrograde." But you know, not really. I mean, things go awry all the time if we're not paying attention. But what I do think is part of the Mercury retrograde is that it just made me laugh. You know, and I think that's part of what this Mercury retrograde is about, is kind of looking at some things in our lives and going, boy, why did I take that so seriously? Why did I get so bent out of shape about that? I mean, that's what I'm kind of feeling here, is that we kind of get into a sense of humor with this retrograde cycle of looking at something and going, wow, I was taking that so seriously. I thought that was such a big deal. And you know, it's not. It's just a mistake. It can be corrected. And that's what I did in the chat room. You know, I thought about it at first. I thought, oh, just take it out. Just totally delete that post. And then I said, no, it's okay to say, hey, guys, I made a mistake. Here's what I want you to know. Here's the right website. So, you know, think about that during the retrograde, too. So what? We make mistakes all the time. That's not the issue. The issue is just recognizing it and correcting it and not beating ourselves up for it, not going into judgment. All right. So make that one of the things that you really think about during this Mercury retrograde. Now, I want to just speak very briefly about Venus going into Sagittarius on Friday, because Venus is what, you know, we associate with love and money and finances and everything that we value. And of course, what happens when she leaves Scorpio, which has been kind of a heavy, you know, very, very deep-seated kind of energy where we're very, very serious about our relationships. Well, she just kind of bubbles right to the top and says, okay, I'm ready to have some fun. I'm ready to have some adventure. You know, Sagittarius is about teaching and learning and traveling and literally finding as many life experiences as we can. So when it comes to your relationships especially, lighten up. You know, she is all about going out and having adventure. She's about dating or just meeting a lot of people. She's not about heavy commitment issues. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't talk about those things. In fact, I think you very much will. But just remember, if there is this sense of all of a sudden not wanting to have all this heaviness around you when it comes to relationships, that's Venus in Sagittarius. Now, one other warning, though, I always kind of smile this time of year when Venus is usually in Sagittarius, because that's another time when we think, you know, that we can just spend our money and charge things and just go crazy, because Sagittarius is expansive. And it says the more the merrier, the more the better. It's quantity, not quality, although that's one of the Sag issues, is really trying to balance out quality versus quantity. So just keep an eye on it, because this is a tendency to go out and buy all those Christmas gifts or, you know, do all these expansive things. But then when Venus hits Capricorn in December, well, guess what? The bills start coming due. So think about that. And along those same lines, I'm just going to make one other comment, and that is that Jupiter, the planet that rules Sagittarius. Well, you know, for this past year, Jupiter has been at home in Sagittarius. Expansive thinking, you know, and just really getting into some things. Well, do you realize Jupiter changes signs every single year? It stays about a year, 12 to 13 months in a sign. So Jupiter's going into Capricorn on December 2nd. So talk about, you know, taking those balloons and bringing them back down to earth, grounding some wishes and dreams. That's what Jupiter and Capricorn is going to be about. And that's pretty exciting. But it also, I think we're really going to feel that Venus going into Capricorn, because Jupiter is going to do it about the same time. So we're going to talk a whole lot more about Jupiter later on the show. Not today, but in the weeks to come, because that is a big energy. But for now, let's talk to Caroline Nettle. Caroline, are you there?
I am, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am so excited. I mean, and talk about expansion, and Jupiter sitting in Sagittarius. I really am very thrilled to have you on One to Listen and to introduce you to the audience today. So I would like to just start by saying, are there a couple of things that you'd like to tell people about yourself?
Oh, yes, of course. And what to say? Gosh. So I am English, as you may guess. And, I have spent most of my life traveling because I have a lot of Sagittarius in my chart, and I love new adventures and finding new cultures and all of that. And I'm lately just kind of settled in the north of England. I thought I would end up somewhere really exotic and hot, and I'm ended up in this cold, dark, small little island called England. But here I am. And just very quickly, I'm just starting a project which is going to be about horticultural therapy, gardening, and helping people with PTSD. So when I'm not
nice,
that's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Oh, that's really nice. I like that a lot. Because in fact, you probably don't know this. I'm a master gardener. It's a certification that you take, and I'm also a master composter. So I don't do all that all the time. And in fact, I'm a long ways from really, really being, a master gardener, even though I took the certification. But I love that sort of thing. I just, being outside, really participating with the earth and doing those kinds of things is one of my favorite things to do.
Me too, but I have to say I couldn't possibly claim to be a master gardener. I did my first gardening in 2018, so I'm really late to the party. But I do believe I'm channeling my ancestors, because whenever we look back, they were farmers or cattle ranchers, or so I feel there's something of that coming through. But I found it really late, but I love it. Yes, love it.
Yes. Oh, good. Well, you know what? And like you said, you've got a moon in Sagittarius, right?
Yeah.
So that is really opening up for you. And in fact, Jupiter's sitting right on your moon. Do you realize Jupiter's sitting right on your moon right now and will be there like for the next week?
Oh,
so, yeah, which also makes it, by the way, perfect timing for you to join One to Listen, because, by the way, everybody, her moon is sitting in the third house of communication.
Fantastic.
And whenever in fact, a lot of the advisors have, planets sitting in the third house, because I think it makes we like to talk, we like to communicate, we like to network and connect with other people.
Absolutely. I have been told that before, that I sometimes need to let other people talk. Yes.
Yes, that's the way it works, Caroline. But, tell us, like I said, you've been at this for quite a while. And I know that you're really passionate about several things. One of them being angel communication, or, being an angel intuitive, but also about being a health intuitive. So would you like to kind of launch into one of those categories and just tell us, either how you got into it or just let your passion speak?
Thank you very much. So I did what I was told to do the whole way through my career up until about 2004. So I went into corporate. I became very masculine. I trampled all over everybody. I wasn't a very nice person to be around, but I was super, super successful. And then I did what lots of people do, and I got really, really sick. And I think it was more that my soul was dying. I just did not want to be in corporate, but I just followed the path that was set out for me, not really understanding. I don't think that I had a choice. So one day a lady came into work and she put a sign up. She said, you can try this for £5, which is about $8.50 or something. And I went in, and if I'm really honest, when she did the session on me, I was like, what are you doing? And I asked 1,000 questions, and I didn't really feel any better until about session 4. So this isn't a magic pill or anything like that, but slowly I started not needing to sleep in the afternoon and not being so grumpy in the morning and having such a hard time getting to be human. And, there was just really subtle changes going on. And on the 5th session, she just said to me, well, why don't you try the course? And I honestly think up until that point, I was probably it was in 2005, so 15 years ago. No, I can't do maths. Gosh, that's terrible, isn't it? Anyway, however long it was ago. And I just something in me just said yes. And I don't know if you've ever had that happen, but the words were coming out of my mouth and I'm not sure that I said them. Do you know what I mean? It was like, yes.
Yes.
So I walked into this room full of people and I just thought, whoa, this is me. And I'd never, ever felt like that before. So I learned the technique, and I went to Sweden and England and all sorts of places to learn. It's a fantastic, phenomenal technique. But what I learned from that, doing that course, is I'm actually really good at helping people with their emotional issues. So the technique helps with physical issues, but my belief is probably about 90% of illnesses are caused by stuck emotional belief systems or traumas or whatever the words you want to say. So what I found was I have this innate ability to sort of look at a body or somebody standing in front of me or a client or whatever and say, well, if I give you an example, it's probably a better thing to do than I had an army guy come in. He was probably 75. He was one of those big, stocky men. He wasn't in uniform, but I could see him in uniform, and I knew he was ex-army. And he had every single illness in the book. And he was still really strong with it. He had a really strong spirit, but I could see that the body was really struggling. And we sat down, and it sounds unbelievable when I say it, but this is absolutely what happened. So we went through all the illnesses and the symptoms and everything, and when I sat down and started doing the scan, I was like, oh, so when you were about 3 years old, somebody took your teddy bear from you and you were highly traumatized by it. And he said yes and started crying. It was really interesting because this is a huge man. He was really, really strong-willed and everything. And because of that one memory, that a 3-year-old cannot understand why you are taking away their most treasured possession. So to them, it's the end of the world. To an adult, it's like, oh, I need to put it in the washing machine, or perhaps it's a punishment or something. But to this very, very strong man, that was the root of most of his illnesses. Now, did he get better quickly? No, he didn't. But we gradually and slowly just worked on all the other belief systems that had been started because of this one traumatic event. And this is what I'm always really fascinated in. What's traumatic to me might be a walk in the park for you, and nobody can ever explain why or how you get the belief systems you get. But one of the things I love to tell people is that if you say to a child 3 times, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid, that's all it takes for that child to think I'm stupid. So there we have a belief system which has been instilled in a child. So imagine what he's going to, I say he or she is going to do with that belief system for the rest of his life. Well, I'm stupid, I won't try then. Well, there's no point going for that job. Well, I don't think I'll be as good as that person. And we start off with a fundamentally quite important belief system, but then we put lots of other belief systems on top of that. So my job, I feel like I'm not being very clear, and I will try and be a bit more succinct. So my job is to go in and find out what your core belief systems or what the things are that happened to you, which you interpreted as good or bad or traumatic or not or whatever, and just help to remove the energetic charge that sits in your body because of that incident, belief system, or whatever it is. And I love what I do, because if I had 10 people in front of me with exactly the same problem, like, you can bet your bottom dollar I'd have 10 different stories, because nobody's lived anybody else's life. We don't know what we brought with us into this life. You might have ancestral patterns. You might have past life problems. You could have belief systems that weren't yours that you took on. I mean, it's just so complicated and complex. But what I find that I more and more as I work with a variety of different people is I seem to be quite good at those people who've been around the houses. And by that, I mean they've been to doctors and specialists and, surgeons and had all sorts of medication. And nobody can really say, well, this is why you're ill or this is what's wrong with you. And I think one of the great things about the way I approach it is because I don't say, okay, you give me your list of symptoms and all the drugs that you're on. I say to the body-mind complex, what is it that you need to remove to get this person back to health and harmony? So it's a very different way of doing things. I definitely don't heal anybody, but what I can do is help to balance out your energy in a way that will allow you to live a much happier, freer life.
Which is exactly what we all want.
Well, yes, not everybody's ready, that's true. But yeah, the majority of people, it's just so fascinating, CA. I just love to do it.
Yes. And, I agree. I mean, I was resonating with so many things that you said. Like, for instance, one thing I learned early on doing astrology that shocked me is I would see something in a chart and I go, ooh, this feels really sensitive. I better be really careful around here. And it wasn't at all. The person is like, oh, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then I would hit some other thing that I'm thinking, okay, this is nothing. And they would burst into tears. And that just taught me early on that my interpretation of a situation isn't going to be what theirs is. And so don't ever assume that you know exactly emotionally or psychologically how this is going to feel to them, because something that to you just seems like, well, so what? They took it to heart. It became a traumatic experience for them. And the opposite, something that I think is really sensitive. And they're just like telling me all these wild stories. And don't seem to care at all. So that's such an important thing. But I think the other thing that you've kind of pointed out is that oftentimes we see healing only on the physical level.
Yeah.
And that's not really where it's at. And it's even possible for people to heal, I think. Now, if you disagree, I want you to say so. But you said something about the man that you had worked with. Now, did all his symptoms go away or did he instantly heal? No, but there was still a healing going on within him. And I think it's very possible sometimes that we get very fixated on symptoms. If only this symptom would go away, I'd be happy. But what we eventually realize is that we can go through a healing process emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and the symptom may not actually even change that much, but our whole interpretation of that symptom does change.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And also, how ready are you to let go of this symptom? Sometimes I get lots of attention because I've got a dodgy knee, or I get my place in the family is secure because I need all this help. And if I get better, that might go away. And I don't subconsciously know that that's the role I'm playing, or that's a game, or that's something that I'm thinking. But that very much comes into it. But I wanted to add something, because what you made me think of is one of the things that I have come up so often and, so frequently that it must just be a universal thing. But so mothers are very, very, very busy people, especially when they're new mums with a new baby and they're exhausted because they've just been through the birthing process and they're getting no sleep and they're having to feed and blah, blah. And one of the things that I seem to pick up on is the theme of abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually when the baby's sort of 0 to 6 months. So mum has to go to the washroom, okay? So she checks everything's fine. She leaves the room. And at that instant, the baby goes, I'm going to die. And I have it so, so often. Now, I'm not saying this to make mums feel really bad. Of course not. But we don't know where we make decisions. But of course, to the baby, I've just lost my nourishment. I've lost my protection. I've lost my security. Mum might be back in a minute and a half. She might
right.
She's gone. But to the baby, that's a life and death situation. And I must say, I find that sort of example of a belief system that makes no sense to us as an adult. If you're leaving the room, I'm like, have a nice time, whatever. But to the baby, it's life or death. So I do find, especially in, women are telling me the whole time my relationships aren't working. I find myself really needy. Like I really like it at the beginning when it's going really well. And then he sort of walks away and I get really needy. What's it about? And I might go in and find something as almost, I want to say the word mundane, as mum left the room and you've got fear of abandonment. And it's incredible how what I love to do is watch the people change when you take away these, fundamental belief systems. It's so fantastic to watch them stand up taller, have a spring in their step. I love it. I really love it. But it can be something that, for example, I'm just starting to work, hopefully, with people with PTSD. And I've been reading a lot of peer-reviewed academic reports. And one of them was telling me that 1 in 4 people get PTSD after a traumatic event. So what happens to the other 3? They've had
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, but this one person, for whatever reason, has gone into PTSD, and it's not a mild thing to have. So I'm not mocking in any way, but I'm like, my head is saying, so what happens to those other 3? Do they just process and move on? But fantastic for them, obviously. But I think possibly, here you've got to take into account history and family health and mental health in the family, and your own spiritual strength, and all sorts of different things come into play. But it's fascinating why we are where we are in our life and what we need to do in order to move forward sometimes.
Well, and I certainly don't know why the 3 don't get the PTSD. But one thing I can imagine is just where you were going with this. When we have a belief system, let's say that the basic belief system is I'm worthy, I'm valuable, and then something happens, we interpret that, boy, that was just an outlier. That was an aberration. Whereas if our belief system is, I've been abandoned before, I may not even be worth it to start with, and so it's inevitable that the other shoe is going to drop. It's inevitable that this person's going to leave me or that something's going to happen. Then when something does happen, we go, see, there you go. That's me. I mean, don't you, I really, and sometimes, I see that. In fact, I remember years and years ago, there was a little boy who had been sent to a therapist, and truthfully, almost anybody from the outside would say he was very, very maladjusted. But the therapist basically said, there's very little I can do for him because he so believes in himself. He has so much self-confidence, he doesn't see any of this as being a problem.
Wow.
And I thought that was an interesting thing because you would kind of say, oh my God, he has no self-confidence and blah. And the therapist said, no, it's actually just the opposite. Trying to work to get through his veneer of, hey, yeah, these other people are the ones that are wrong. It's not me. And I just thought that was an interesting kind of note because although, I mean, truthfully, I think even psychologically, when we become bullies or when we become really blustery, it really is covering up this inward sense of I'm not deserving, I'm not valuable. So I have to keep proving that to other people. I have to just keep acting that on the outside. In fact, I had told somebody the other day that, I just think it is so true. It's just one of those psychological things that the more confused we feel inside, the more disorganized, the more upset, then the more we become kind of obsessive compulsive about ordering the external parts of our life. This has to be this way. The furniture has to be this way. The food has to be this way. Everything has to be a certain way because I'm convinced if I can just order the outside, then somehow that's going to put peace and order back on the inside, which of course it doesn't.
Doesn't work at all.
No, it doesn't.
One of the things I was thinking whilst you were saying this is, if I take my own life, I was not made to fit inside a nice, neat box. It's not my nature. It doesn't suit my temperament or my spiritual self. And yet, for so long, my mum, bless her, she was doing the best she could, but man, it was awful. Anyway, but she was trying to fit me inside this really neat box, and I'm someone who likes to throw paint at the wall. It's just an analogy. And it wasn't until I started on this journey myself and, right, okay, who am I? And I had to really unlearn, because my mum was doing what most parents do. I don't want you to go through what I did, so I'm going to make sure that everything's perfect is the wrong word, but and bless her, she did the best that she could. I think I've said that twice now. But what I'm trying to say is one of the great things about what I offer people, I think, is like we wear all these masks. I'm a good mom, I'm a good sister, I'm a good girlfriend, I'm a good wife, I'm a good daughter, I'm a good, blah, blah, blah. And we wear all of these and they sort of hide who we are. Well, I think what I do is help to just remove these masks, and so it was I'm very lucky being one of these practitioners. I get a lot of sessions myself, and it's allowed me to find out who I am and what I actually believe. And knowing who I am, I think is, possibly the most spiritual lesson you can learn. I think it's something that we're not encouraged to do in conventional society, but it brings with it such a relief and I don't have to prove to you that I'm a good person or that I'm lovable. I just believe that now, which I never did before. So it's been a long, hard struggle, and now I can sit with other people and I can say, okay, so what we really need to look at is all the ways you hide from being you, and can I help you to take off? I use the analogy, lots of coats. So some of the coats so that you're walking a bit lighter and being a bit happier. And that gives me such great joy when I can help other people with that.
Oh, well, it sounds wonderful. And I know you've been very successful with your health in, being a health intuitive up to this point. So I think it's such a blessing and such an asset to one to listen.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that. Now, we don't have to switch tracks, but I was kind of thinking, do you want to speak about some of the other things you do, like being the angel intuitive?
I would love to. And I think one of the things I would like to say is I'm happy to do a couple of questions if anybody has any. So do put them in the chat room. So I think I knew fairly young that I got messages that weren't from my head, if you see what I mean. I just knew things about people. But I was brought up by a very Victorian mother, and sort of thing. I actually think she could be psychic herself, but has shut it down completely. But anyway, I believe her mother was quite psychic. So, and that's why I think perhaps my mum is, without doing it. Anyway, so she, boxed me around the ears and said, don't be rude and don't tell anyone that, blah, blah, blah. And so I learned not to do that. But it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I went to a psychic class. And she said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I've just come to see if this is, my cup of tea. And she was like, don't be ridiculous. Sorry? I didn't know what she could see. And then she said, well, sit down there and give everyone a message. And I'd never done it before. And I was like, blah, 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 and it just flowed. And I was like, wow, that's fun. And I so love doing it. But, I discovered fairly early on that I don't like mediumship. And the reason for that is I get these people coming through and it just makes me so tearful. And I'm sitting there sobbing and the person in front of me is like, oh, I've never met my dad. I don't know what you're talking, I don't know why you're upset. And he's coming through saying, I'm so sorry. And me and mediumship do not get on very well. But what I love about the angels and working with the angels is they're always giving you what I would call practical advice to bring what you need into your life, or to remove what you don't need from your life, or, how to get from A to B. And it's always, centered around you and said with deep, deep love and admiration. I just love working with the angels. And I will say this, I was somebody who did not experience unconditional love in my life. I'm not sure many people do, if I'm really, really honest, but it wasn't even conventional love. It was, I had never been loved in the way that I had to get used to being loved when I started working with the angels. And it was so tough. But man, I'm happy to be there now. So that's something that I've had to really learn is that I'm lovable and that they love me. And they do, they just keep coming down, sending love to the whole planet. And I'm so blessed to be able to do this work, and I'm so excited to be on One to Listen.
Oh, nice. And I also want to throw out there, just in case there's somebody who's listening, and when you mention mediumship and they're like, what's that? That
Oh,
is connecting with somebody who has passed. And what my experience is, and I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but that seems to be a gift or something that happens a lot of times to somebody who isn't even looking for it. I mean, I'm sure there are some people who say that's really what I want to do. I want to connect with somebody who has passed on. But a lot of people I know who are excellent at it, they will literally say, I just all of a sudden realized that it was coming through me. It just happened. And so I'm kind of with you, though, that it's you either like it or you don't, or it's either something that's really a gift or it's not, even though I think you can learn it, because truthfully, I think we are all one, whether we're in the body or not. And so it's just a matter of kind of tuning into certain frequencies or certain vibrations. So,
and
yeah.
I just say here, I wasn't being rude about the skill of mediumship because I think it's
Oh, no, you weren't.
gift. But for me, probably because I had lots of unhealed trauma or whatever, it just didn't suit me. But no, I love listening to mediums, especially when they're in a room full of people that really going, don't believe this is rubbish. And then, and then they say, oh, your aunt Flo's in the room. And they're like, oh. I just think it's such a healing tool, but it's just not one for me is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me too, I don't think it's one for me either. Although if somebody just point blank asks me, and so I just open up and it usually comes through. Or I have had the experience every once in a while. I tend to, this sounds odd. Well, it's not odd. It's just one of those things you don't hear as often. I tend to smell when somebody is in the room or the space. And so every once in a while I'll be working with somebody or I'm going to work with somebody and all of a sudden the whole room is totally filled with a smell. Yeah. And I know, I mean, at first it kind of freaked me out because I thought, oh my God, what's going on? Like, in fact, the first time it happened, it was like cigar smoke. And I thought there must be somebody outside my window smoking a cigar. But I figured out and it turns out it was this woman's grandfather. But it was just interesting because now I recognize if all of a sudden the room is filled with a certain scent, a certain smell, it's almost always that's what it is. Somebody who has passed over is coming through. But so, I mean, I don't pursue it, but it's just what it is. Okay. And it looks like there are some questions in the chat room. Now, the first one, though, Tiffany, I don't know if we need a little more specificity. It says, can you look at my blood? Sorry. Would love feedback now. And, we're not particularly doing the health intuition, I don't think. But on the other hand, I'm going to leave that up to you, Caroline, if you have a response to that.
I'm going to say, Tiffany, thank you so much for asking the question. But because it can get really personal, and I don't know how many people are listening to this, I possibly would recommend you, if you want to book a session, then do, but it could be really, really personal, and I'd feel a bit uncomfortable doing that on air. Should we say it like that?
Yes. Okay.
So I'll go to Denise Horn. What a fantastic name. If there's time, I would enjoy an angel reading. Is there anything specific? Let's just see what Denise needs to know. Do you know they're showing me, this is interesting, I don't know what it means, so let's talk about it and then it will come. So they're showing me one of those little kiddies paddling pools, and in it I've got a little crocodile and a little giraffe, one of those inflatable things. And like, I don't know who you are, but I'm feeling that you're standing behind me and I'm looking at this child's pool and it's like I want to say, okay, I want to play, but I just can't allow myself to. So I think what the angels want you to know is that you are in a period of time where I feel that you're being really serious. I'm sorry for laughing. I didn't mean to laugh. I think I'm nervous. And you're being asked to get in the paddling pool or paint a picture or bake a cake. I feel like it's very simple stuff that will help you to move your energy, because I feel like your energy is a bit stuck at the moment. But so they've given me this paddling pool. It doesn't mean anything to me except I would have fun, running around with bare feet in a paddling pool. So I don't know why they're showing me the crocodile and the giraffe. Maybe that means something to you. But I get that what they're trying to ask you to do is let your hair down, play a little, do something other than the thing that you're worrying about so that you come back with a new perspective. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, and thank you.
Okay, so would love to hear some feedback on that, especially the alligator. Okay, I would love a message from the angels about my current job and financial security or anything else they would want me to know about releasing and transforming my life. Do you know, as soon as I tune into you, Anna, I'm seeing one of those, I don't know what you call them. You know, in a castle and they have a big iron black gate. Can you help me, CA? What's it called? Portcullis? Is that the, anyway, whatever it's called.
Okay, so, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm English, sorry. Yeah, so I'm seeing a big black gate that's always, you put it down to protect the people in the town. And
oh, okay, yeah, I can picture it. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, so I feel as though you need to somehow raise that gate. I feel that you've got yourself very protected, but in protecting yourself, you are protecting other people. But I'm feeling that happiness for you is on the other side of the gate. And I'm going to say that I feel that here there's some belief systems that are really telling you I'm safe behind the gate. I don't want to do anything else. But I feel like there's a really good opportunity for you once you've raised the gate and gone out. And because beyond the gate, I'm seeing like fields with poppies and daisies, and it feels really free and happy. Behind the gate, I'm not feeling that. It feels quite grey and, a bit morbid, a bit uncomfortable. So I'm feeling as though you need to do something to raise this gate. So that might be overcoming those belief systems or going to talk to someone and get the ideas out of your head to someone who can really, really listen to you. I would feel that would be helpful. I'm not really talking to a therapist, but maybe you have a best friend and you can have a nice hot cup of cocoa. But just start talking about how you keep yourself protected and how you can take a risk and go and try something else. And it might be something, I'm being shown a boat now, so it might be something like a cruise or something. So you're taking yourself out of where you are now and you can see with much more clarity. I hope that helps.
Okay. All right. And Caroline, Tiffany has come back into the chat room a couple times saying she's fine with it being personal, but saying if you're guided to tell her anything, even about career.
Yeah. Oh, is Tiffany at the bottom?
I don't want to push you on that, but if you've got something that...
If it comes up personal, I'm sorry, but I just got experience of a really innocuous question and we went straight to something that was a really big family secret and I didn't know what to do. Anyway, okay, let me just cut my cords to everybody else. Tune into Tiffany. The feeling I'm getting, Tiffany, is quite heavy. And in relation to blood, my guess is something like you've got quite a lot of iron, or I'm not diagnosing you in any way, but I'm just feeling the heaviness. So blood to me should be flowing freely. It should be, watery consistency or maybe a bit thicker, but it should definitely be going around your body. Your heart beats and your blood goes around your body once a second. So that's obviously quite fast. But what I'm feeling with you is quite sluggish and it's not doing that. There's nothing wrong with your heart that I'm feeling, or it's certainly not showing me that there's anything that's wrong with your heart. But I think what I would say is, definitely emotional stuck energy, especially around the groin area I'm feeling with you, which relates to heartbreak, interestingly. And I'm actually, okay, here we go. This is why I love my job. Okay, so I'm seeing a past life where you literally were poisoned with something that made your blood boil. I don't know what I'm saying because I don't know of a substance that will do that, but what I'm seeing is your blood, something was put in your body. I think you may have even eaten it, and it really attacked like all the arteries. It's horrible what happened. Sorry. So you have a kind of a a historic memory in your blood of something coming in and really poisoning you. And I would be happy to work with you on that and remove that, because imagine the implications of that on your health. But what I'm thinking for you, it's difficult to know what to say, because there seems to be lots and lots of things coming at me regarding this. I don't think there's anything seriously wrong with you. I don't want to suggest that in any way, but I just think you can work I'd happily work with you to remove some of these belief systems. It just feels really sluggish and uncomfortable and heavy, and wow, I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what I'm picking up on you. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
So,
well, and Caroline, it really makes a lot of sense to me, because what I've been picking up from her has to do with, and I'm not going to go into the health, but it feels like whether or not it was a past trauma or a current trauma, that something really has like broken down in her life. Something has completely changed, but I feel a resistance to moving on. And the biggest message for me is it's time to move on from it. It really is time to say, what did I learn from this? What are the pieces that are worth taking with me, and leave the rest? I mean, because the rest is, in a sense, rubbish. And it's time to quit looking at this and qualifying it or interpreting it as a disaster and move on. It is really time to look to the future and to move on.
okay.
So, okay. And Caroline, we've got 3 minutes left to close out the show. So I would say if there's one more angel reading you can do in 1 minute, then go ahead and do it. But if you feel like that's not possible, then we just need to give our announcements and close the show down and say thanks to everybody for being here today.
I'm just very quickly going to say and I'm really sorry, but I don't know if I know how to say this, Alicia Bello, dance. I'm hearing dance, movement. I'm hearing clearing out your closets, clearing out your photo albums. I'm feeling like real stuck in the energy around your house. If you hoard a little bit, which would be my guess, then really start looking at where you can clear out, but definitely moving. I'm seeing you do a figure of 8, almost like belly dancing, and I think that will really help your first chakra.
Okay, good. Thanks. And go ahead.
I just saw Tiffany. Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant.
All right. All
Okay.
right. Well, we do have just a couple of minutes, so I wanted to tell everybody thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks to those of you who were, vulnerable enough to actually post your questions in the chat room. I always appreciate that. I mean, I think that is something, really going out on a limb. So thank you for doing that. And Caroline, thank you so much for being here. Is there any announcement you want to make or tell people when they can find you on 1-2-Listen?
Oh, bless. Thank you so much for having me, CA. I'm so new to all this, and you've been super helpful. So thank you very much. Yeah, just look for me. I'm Caroline N on 1-2-Listen. Now, I'm in England, so we have different time zones. So I am on different times. But if you really want to talk to me, you can schedule a session. But just remember, I go to bed when you are awake, and I'm asleep whilst you're awake. So just remember to look at the time differences. But I would happily connect with anyone and help them in any way that I can. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you, Caroline. And also people, many of you already know this. If you want to connect with an advisor on 1-2-Listen and you don't see them as available, that doesn't mean that they can't be available. So you can simply get on to 1-2-Listen.com and you can either put in a request to be the next person in line when they sign on, or you can request a reading at a time that's really going to be good for you. So I would encourage you to do that, because for most of us, that means we're going to get a text on our phone that tells us. So, for instance, with me, if I am available, I will sign on if I can. And then with the, scheduled readings, I'm almost always able to accommodate. We're always going to find a time that's going to work for us. So I would encourage you to do that with Caroline, with myself, and with other people on 1-2-Listen. So thanks a lot, Caroline. Thanks a lot to Scott Weaver for being our producer today. And Caroline, I look forward to you doing your own show.
Thank you very much. It is my intention. Thank you.
Okay, great. I am so excited about that. And everybody, please stay tuned, because up next is Empowerment with Kelly Whetstone. And then after that, it's Katie Weaver, and then Living the Good Life with Robert Underwood. This is CA signing out. You have been listening to Simple Tales with my guest, Caroline Nettle, on 1-2 Radio, where we are changing the way you listen to your world.